Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? Jeff Mosher, Adam Caplan for a very special, very important, very significant Inside the Birds podcast. In this podcast, Adam and I are going to go through this situation facing the Philadelphia Eagles, their coaching staff, their future, because today is Friday for most people listening to this when it comes out. Today will be a very important day in the future of the franchise, and I would say it would be an important weekend and then days to come in the franchise. So we'll go through everything that we know, we'll put it all in perspective and try to give everybody a really good idea of what might transpire over the next few days and how that might impact the organization. It's a lot, Adam. I mean, you and I, and I'll let the listeners know and the viewers know, we've been on the phone a lot for the last 2 or 3 hours. 48 hours, 2 or 3 days. Spoke to a lot of people, cross-checked a lot of things that we're hearing, and I'm intrigued. So this is going to be an interesting podcast to lay it all out.
Yeah, it just reminded me of 2020. We were chasing the Peterson situation, and there was all sorts of reporting out there. A lot of it was not correct, that he was going to stay being head coach. We knew what was going on, that it all depended on the meeting he had with Jeffrey Lurie. Now, Jeffrey did say, and we knew that, and others knew that he wanted to keep him, but we said it was never safe. That was the thing that was out there. They were safe. We shot that all down. It was not safe.
Correct.
And it came down to that meeting. In fact, there were 2 meetings. In fact, the first meeting didn't go well. They wanted to revise his list. Unfortunately, we can give up the offensive coordinator, and he lost his job. So,
yeah.
Now, let me ask you this question. Your information gathering. I know we've cross-checked this stuff. Do you feel that, now again, we'll see. We don't know what exactly is going to be said in this meeting today, as long as it's not canceled or postponed or rescheduled. Assuming it's going to go up today, NovaCare. Do you get the feeling like, Doug Peterson was defiant on a couple things, particularly the offensive coordinator. That was the one he wouldn't give up short. Do you feel like, Nick, from what you've heard from your sources around the league, do you think he's going to be coming in like, oh, I'm not doing this, or I'm not that, or like he's more willing than Doug was 3 years ago?
Well, one thing we'll get into is that, but to answer your question, I think Nick Sirianni understands that he has to make changes and major changes, and we'll get into that. Now, the one thing I couldn't tell you, and I don't think we have the information on, is how many changes is he willing to make and which individuals must or must not be changed, right? So we know that obviously he's looking into some things, and we'll talk about it, but like I don't think we know, just sitting here right now, what the extent of each individual person he's willing to vouch for or not vouch for. So because remember, he of course he's the head coach. He presides over the offense, the defense, the special team. So obviously, like you mentioned with the Doug Peterson situation, the owner wants to hear certain things. We'll get into that. And, I get the sense he's willing to do certain things, but I don't know just how many changes he feels that he needs to make and can make. So that's
Fair
all
enough.
for us to discuss in this pod. Yeah.
Good.
But I agree with you that because Doug's, the way it went down when he got fired, he was defiant because that wasn't the first time. We knew there were coaches that were forced upon him, and coach firings that were forced upon him. And he finally just stood his ground and said, I'm not going to do it. Nick Sirianni's in a different place. This will be his first time where the owner is dissatisfied and he needs to figure out some ways to make it better. Maybe 3 years down the road, if Nick survives this and then the same situation occurs, maybe he'll be defiant like Doug. But right now, I don't think he's I don't think he's in position to be defiant right now.
Yeah, because I just remember, actually went back and looked at the emails that I sent you 3 years ago, from my Gmail account, and I'm kind of laughing, like, I like an exclamation point where I bolded something, make sure we talked about because it wasn't out there. Like, we might as well just hit it. We wait. It's like we sat on a couple things all week. We're like, all right, you know what? We have to talk about this. It's going to be a big deal. And the big thing we were sitting all week is that Doug's not going to, it didn't sound good from what we had heard with Doug, that he was going to give up his offensive coordinator, wouldn't do it. And that cost him his job. There were other things that he pitched to Jeffrey, but that was not going to get him fired. It was the OC who was going to get him fired. There was no debate on that for people involved.
Mm-hmm.
That was unfortunate. And I thought it was interesting when Jeffrey did his little impromptu video. Remember, he said that he didn't really, Doug didn't deserve to get fired, but when you're not aligned with the owner, and he's the one who's writing the checks, one who's so passionate about football. He asks the right questions. If he feels like they're not eye to eye, you're not keeping your job. That's the way it is.
Yeah, no, that is true. And I think it's fair to say that the situation that the Eagles are in now and that Nick Sirianni faces now has a lot of similarities to that situation. It's not identical, not apples to apples, but for this franchise and what we just saw just 3 years ago, I do think there are some pretty strong similarities that we will get into. Inside the Birds, of course, is presented by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. Hope everybody this past week caught the last Q&A. It was fantastic. We thank Quentin, Michael, and Jason Avant for their season-long show that everybody loves. One of the most beloved shows on Inside the Birds is Q&A, and they came at it all year. I thought that this might have been the strongest Q&A year ever because even with the team winning, they were worried about things. They were on top of it. They were really good.
I would say this is the most critical I've seen Q this season. Like he really got after it. Some weeks he just because these guys play the game and they know when they see garbage. I mean, I hate to say that when they see bad football, they're going to call it out. I mean, good for them. You know, they love the team, but they know football. Okay, they played the game. They know what they're looking at, and you have to. I don't want to give it away. If you didn't hear Q the last two shows, watch Q call some of the stuff out. He just can't believe what he see. I love when he said the way. I can't remember exactly the way he said it, but it was just kind of funny. I'm like, there you go. He played. He knows what he's looking at. It ain't right.
Yeah, he used the word befuddles in the last.
Right, befuddled. So right. But you have to hear the way he said it. It's just he doesn't. He's like, what the bleep? You know, how he sort of sedate. But anyway, yeah. I'll say it again. Folks that know us know this line. Bad football is really hard to watch. And I cannot imagine what the owner was going through. Everyone saw, well, not everyone, a lot of people saw the video that's out there. He was walking in the hallway with his son Julian to the locker room after the game. Well, actually, before the game ended, I guess he hadn't seen enough because the game was over by 10 minutes left. But man, here we are 3 years later. It's pretty remarkable.
Awesome, good stuff from Q&A this year. Thank them, and I gotta say, we're gonna share a lot of intel in this podcast, but our Patreon members who participated in our Wednesday night Ask ITB live stream, which I think we did for a 5th straight week, were privy to some of the information that's going to be dropped in this podcast because we had intel at that point. We were actually able to debunk a few things that were out there and add to some other things that we just knew that are not out there. So, and we had about 15, maybe more. I don't know. We had our most participated live stream that I can remember since we started the Patreon channel. So everybody who got in at patreon.com/inside the birds, want to welcome one of our newest members, Holden. But all the people who participated got to hear what we were able to say. So that's another reason that it pays to be a Patreon member. It really does.
And I love that live stream we did with them on at halftime. It's great. It was just so funny because the guys and gals who were in there, they're pretty. I don't want to say they were sedate. They're like they knew the team, and they knew that the team basically was shot. You know, they were bad to end the season, and it's like, what are you going to do? Like the fact that they were down 7 was like a miracle, but they had nothing left. And oh boy. Anyway, I just so we'll do these. We're probably going to do them bi-weekly going forward. But obviously now, if major news breaks, we feel the need, we're going to do a live stream. Like that's going to happen. And that's the beauty of Patreon. We can do it anytime we want. But patreon.com/inside the birds. More announcements coming for 2024. We've got a couple things we're hoping on to, which we can't announce yet. We got to confirm it. But once we do, we can't wait to tell you.
Yes. All right, let's take care of some housekeeping first before we get into some of the nuts and bolts of the coaching situation. By the way, my favorite part of this whole season of Q&A is Jason Avant at the beginning of every podcast saying, let's take care of some house cleaning. And at one point I had to tell him, Q was the one. He's like, don't you mean house keeping, not cleaning? And I said to Jay, are you firing us? Because you keep talking about cleaning house here. I didn't know what was going on. But yeah, housekeeping is what we're going to take care of. Yes. The Eagles signed a bunch of players to reserve futures deals, which happens, after the last game of the year. Every year they signed a bunch of guys who are on either 1-year deals or or practice squad deals. So without further ado, Adam, why don't you take it away with this list of names?
There's two that I absolutely know. I know these are long shots, but we'll explain. Lou Nichols is back. He was on the practice squad for a bit. Jaquan Davis, I'm not familiar with him. He's a receiver. Lou Nichols is the running back. Austin Watkins has been on a couple teams. This guy that I'm about to talk about, I love. Jacob Harris. I love this signing. He's a tall receiver who played tight end at Central Florida. He was sort of a quasi receiver tight end. He was actually, no, I'm sorry. He was a receiver at Central Florida.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams drafted him, converted him to tight end because he didn't quite run well enough to play tight end receiver at this level. They went back and forth, back and forth. He looked like he was going to be a player, like a fourth receiver, and line him up as a slot tight end. And then he tore his ACL. It took him a while to get it right. He was with the Jaguars practice squad this offseason, or like this last year, excuse me. And the Eagles agreed to a contract term with him 2 weeks ago. I cannot wait to see this guy. He is a fascinating player. This could be, they haven't got anything out of their wide receiver 3 for whatever reason. That's something that they have to do a better job with. But this kid's got some talent. Joe Ngata's back. Griffin Hebert. Again, there's no R. It's not H-E-R-B like Bobby A. Bear. So maybe it's Hebert. I don't know. Hebert. I don't know. But he's back. He was on the practice squad. And yet, I have to count how many times this guy's been back. Brett Toth is back for another round.
Yes, the new Julian Vandevelde. It's Brett Toth.
We know how many times Vandevelde was back with them.
I think it was 9, if I'm not mistaken.
I would laugh on Twitter. Like if I put it out there on Twitter and he like favorite or say something, I totally forgot about him.
Yeah.
Raven Clark's back for another one. Guard Jason Poe. Lecitus Smith is back. He was with them in the fall. EJ Jenkins was a young journeyman tight end.
Yep.
Offensively, Thomas Booker's back. Noah Ellis is back.
Good.
Jackson's back. And this signing I love. We talked about this 3 or 4 weeks ago. Terrell Lewis, who is a pass rusher from Alabama, who was drafted by the Rams, just never made it. He's got ability. Now, he was drafted to play as a 34 outside linebacker. It depends. See, we don't know what kind of defense they're going to run yet, but he's really a stand-up outside linebacker. So we'll take a look at him. No TAs. Brandon Smith is back. He was on the practice squad, former draftee by the Panthers. Mario Goodrich, Makai Garner. Tywan Mullins back, slot corner.
Familiar name.
And Tristan McCollum.
Yeah, and Tristan McCollum. So the one name that really stood out to me, Adam, as far as new guys, was Austin Watkins, because he had a really good preseason with the Browns. In fact, didn't he play against the Eagles? Didn't the Eagles and Browns play in the preseason? If I'm not mistaken, he had some pretty big games. I know it's just the preseason, but like we're just talking about futures players here. So he stood out.
Yeah, he did. He was with the Niners. I remember him with the Niners, another free agent. He got hurt. Yeah, in fact, I was kind of surprised he didn't make their roster.
Same.
But he was on the practice squad. You know what's interesting? He was on their practice squad. The Browns, he was on their active roster for a little bit. Actually, 1 week. He was on the practice squad 18 out of 19 weeks, or 17 out of 18 weeks. So I do wonder, we have to look up his contract. We haven't got the terms yet. I wonder if they gave him a little, like a signing bonus or anything to entice him. I don't know. But I mean, obviously, they liked him enough. And as you said, that he went against them. He's out of UAB, by the way. So that's a good one. That's another interesting game that they could look at in OTA.
Awesome. Good stuff. Okay. So those are the reserve futures deals for the Eagles. Let's take a quick break to hear from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right. So let's talk about the coaching staff, the ownership, management, everything that is going on. Today's a big day. Today, we know, and before I even get into all this is, again, stuff that Adam and I have discovered through a lot of sourcing, a lot of cross-checking, talking to a lot of people. We're lockstep with this information, so this comes from both of us. We know that today, Friday morning, that Nick Sirianni and the owner and I believe Julian Lurie will be involved too, along with Howie, are going to meet with all together. There was a report, I believe, that they had not had a conversation yet. That we understand is not true. That Nick Sirianni has spoken to Jeffrey. It just wasn't in person. It was either over the phone or over Zoom.
Okay.
We know that they've had a discussion. We know that Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni have had discussions about the end of the season and moving forward. But today is the big meeting, and this is where the similarities are, Adam, between the whole Doug Peterson thing, because it's our understanding that in this meeting, it is Nick Sirianni's responsibility, first and foremost, to present a plan to Jeffrey Lurie on how to rectify all the things that went wrong that led to them going 1-5 at the end of the year and then losing in an embarrassing fashion in the playoffs. So we know that the defense all year long had problems. We know the offense, especially all year long, really was not great, but especially over the last 5 or 6 weeks, was a problem. And so it is on Nick Sirianni in this meeting to lay out what his plans are to solve this problem. And
Right.
go ahead. You can answer that.
That's the similarity. I mean,
Yep.
see, Doug's problem was he refused to look outside the roster. If you remember, Rich Scangarello was not his idea. Remember our reporting back then, 3 years ago. Okay, we're 2024. So our reporting then was that when they hired Scangarello, this is, Jeffrey wanted innovation. He was looking for, the next great thing, which was and it sure is great. Right now, the Shanahan disciples are super hot right now. We'll get into that later. And it just didn't work out. And boy, Doug never seemed to embrace it. Remember, I think he was asked in a press conference about that they need innovation. He was really not happy with it, even the point.
Right.
He shot that down. So this one seems a little different to me because, first of all, if he's going to fire him, if he's like, well, look, I mean, it doesn't take a brains to figure out that Jeffrey was unhappy with what happens, and no Eagle fan can be happy.
Yeah.
But if he really wanted to fire him, he would have fired him Tuesday.
Right.
Because the game was Monday night, they got back. If you don't want him, fire him. That's what you do. You don't make him wait. Today's Friday. So at least going into this, just like he went in with the Doug one, though I'm not sure if he knew Doug was not going to give up his offensive coordinator. But this one, to me, seems like, okay, I would think Jeffrey wants to keep him. Seems like it. Doesn't mean he will. As you said, it really comes down to this meeting. We warned people 3 years ago. There's no definites here. And there are no definites here. It depends what, as you said, I thought you said so very well. What's your pitch? You can't be talking about promoting a bunch of guys from within. That sure as hell ain't going to work with a bad football team. The way they end, let's call it like it is. The way they ended the season, a bad football. If you reverse the season, you would think this team was 5-win team. Okay, would you not agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with you.
Oh. I mean, what else can I call them? They were awful.
Yeah. I've told a couple of people, you wonder if the Eagles replayed the whole season with the way they were playing down the stretch, would they win four games? Like you just said, it's very questionable the way they were playing. And so to that point, Adam, what we know is that the owner is very dissatisfied, and people familiar with the situation know that the owner is not happy. So this isn't just a meeting where, all right, Nick, what's your plan? Sounds good to me. What can we do to help you out? This is what is your plan to fix this? I want every single detail. And then the owner has to believe that the plan's going to work. So as you've said before, and you're relating it to Doug, this is where the similarities are. This doesn't mean he's safe right now. He has to present a viable plan. And by the way, we'll get into this in a second, but it ain't real easy when you're just 2 days removed, 3 days removed from the end of your season to all of a sudden have, like, oh, I got this guy, I got that guy, I mean, he hasn't had a whole lot of time to figure out all the things that went wrong and all the people who can help him fix it. If you want to say it feels like entrapment, I wouldn't argue with you. It's really tough. So Nick better be on his P's and Q's from this. We know, Adam, through some sourcing here, that Nick is scouring the landscape. He is making calls. He is looking for people to bring in to be play callers, both on defense and offense. Nick is a CEO head coach. He's already said in a press conference after year one, he gave up calling plays. He didn't think he was doing a great job of it. He didn't call plays in Indianapolis. So I imagine that would be on his side when he's talking to Lurie here. Like, I'm going to find you good play callers here, like real guys who can come in and fix our deficiencies, our play calling deficiencies on offense and defense.
Yeah. See, the couple things here is he does not run a true West Coast. It's a combination of West Coast and it's what he learned from Frank Reich, what he learned from Todd Haley. Todd Haley was more West Coast, and whatever he brought in from college. So that's what made it tough for Brian Johnson. It's not his system, and Nick said that. So it's really not fair to Brian Johnson what he went through this season. Now, what I wonder, because they have the analytical data that Nick's got to answer that. Not just what he did with Doug Peterson, where Jeffrey would have this sheet and go, okay, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? It's like the whole season. Okay, here's the data. Why didn't this happen? Okay, you and I've talked, and everybody knows who watches this team closely. The lack of in-breakers, all the scheme stuff, the tapes, the stuff that's everyone can see, not just data. You can see with your eyes. Lack of in-breakers. Screen game, absolutely abominable. The worst screen game I've ever seen in my life. It's the worst screen offense I've seen. They don't run great concepts. I'm not interested in hearing about last year. That doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. It's about what you did this season, whether you're running the same scheme or not. What did you do if they're figuring you out, what did you do off that? They didn't do much off of that. That's on Nick.
Right.
So Jeffrey knows enough about football, and so does Howie, and obviously Julian and anyone else would be in that meeting. They have to have detail. Why didn't this happen? And what happened? And they were stopping you. Like I would love to be a fly on the wall to hear how Nick responds to this stuff. It's real football stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And this stuff's important to Jeffrey.
Yeah, he's flying in from the Caribbean, right?
Yeah, I guess it's out there. But with that, look, this is his baby, man. This team is his deal. Okay, like we've said we put. We weren't the only ones, but we put this out in 2018. Some early reporting on spring of 18. Jeffrey's very involved, and others. You saw the report, the great detail from the Athletics a couple years ago. So this thing means a lot to him, and Nick better be prepared for this.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens because again, bad football is really hard to watch, and I couldn't imagine being him. I know how much this team means to him. We all do, and for Howie puts this roster together. We're not saying he didn't make mistakes. He certainly did this year. But the offense should have been way better. It's embarrassing how bad the offense was, or inconsistent.
So Adam, this is the sense I get. You tell me you agree, and this is based on the reporting and people who speak to. All of the things we saw in the last 7 weeks of the season, sort of a guy not having an answer, a guy grasping at straws. He needs to present a totally different side of himself, a well thought out, articulated, detailed plan that shows that he knows the issues, knows how to fix them confidently, and can showcase that in a very short amount of time. Again, I don't think that can be understated enough. To ownership, to Howie, Julian, all those involved, and it's got to convince them. So this could be a very long meeting where they're going through every single thing, or I don't know, maybe it's not a very long meeting and Nick just thinks like, that old Andy Reid, we're a hair off here, or we clean this up, we tighten that. I don't think the whole we're going to clean it up here and tighten it up there is going to be his best selling point. And I would like to think that he is smart enough to know that. I would like to think that there's somebody in there that is smarter than what we saw for the last 7 weeks of the season.
All right. So I could tell you for Doug Peterson's meetings, he was prepped. He was told what to expect, what the issues were. And some of this, I don't know if he was told everything, but he was prepped pretty well for those meetings. It wasn't just about his coaching staff. It's about what, as you were talking about, and you're absolutely right. Why did this team fold like a tent? It's just one of those inexplicable things that you just could not see coming. It's one thing where they're escaping dangerously against the Bills and Chiefs. That's really when it started, where they had to come back, and they got very lucky against Dallas. If Dak doesn't step out of bounds, I'm sure they would have lost. But anyway, and then the team folded. Why did it fold? Like, why couldn't you get the team to respond? Like, that to me is really troubling.
Right.
For a team that seems to buy into this guy and his connectivity and all that stuff, it's embarrassing how bad this team was. They were not competitive. Would you agree with me? The Tampa Bay game, they were not competitive.
They were not competitive. No, they were comical. I mean, they were running into each other on offense and defense. They weren't tackling anybody. They looked like a team that was not prepared. That's one thing that really struck me over the last few weeks of the season, is not that just lost games or had some issues in coverage or picking up a blitz, but they just completely look outclassed from the start. They just looked unprepared, which is usually a reflection of the head coach. Now, I hate when people just say, "Oh, this team is unprepared, that the coach didn't know what he was doing." You know, I mean, you practice a lot. I don't want to disrespect the coaching, the practice involved, what it takes, because they're out there. They put the work in. But there is no doubt about it that whatever they were trying to do wasn't working, and they didn't do a good job of fixing it, and they didn't have answers. Nick Sirianni needs to present a strategy that isn't just theoretical. He needs to present a convincing strategy to ownership. And we'll see.
Let me ask you this question, because I know from just the way that they practice. Look, it was great in 22. They stayed incredibly healthy. This season, they did not. I wonder if he never seemed to fight it. He seemed to be, he never really complained about it. But because I wonder if he has his own pitch. Hey, I wonder if he would say, "Hey, listen, one of the things we noticed is we had a lot of injuries. We don't practice very much. We practice less than most teams do. It's a fact. I know that for a fact." So I do wonder if he would pitch to Jeffrey, "Hey, does our date, through sports science, is there a way they could practice a little bit more? Is there a way?" Because I someone I really respect from another team tell me that that's just not long term. It's tough to. I know the Rams have gotten away with it, and hey, look, it works for them. But I don't know if it really worked for the Eagles this season. I wonder how prepared they were, not just from an injury standpoint, but a sharpness standpoint.
From a rep standpoint, that's a great point. That is a great point.
Yeah,
although somebody would argue it's the same practice schedule from the year before, and they went to the Super Bowl that year. But sometimes you need to dial it up, though, right? Sometimes you need to change.
Yeah, I mean, what they did, Nick, was it week 18?
Oh, it was before that. I think it was like 16 or 17 where he started to have a few Wednesday practices, not just walkthroughs, right? Because they had
right. Well, no, but wasn't it week 18? They went in pads, but they did a walkthrough on a Thursday. I think it was.
Yeah, that was that. Yeah. It was after the Arizona loss. That's what I remember.
Okay, yeah, which makes sense. See, I'm so fascinated. We had a lot of information through that meeting. What went on with Doug and the owner, but this one's a little bit more complex. This is just because the roster's so much better now. How could they fall off like this? As you said, he's going to have answers. I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen.
You and me both, and probably a million Eagles fans out there. It's certainly going to be. It sort of feels like a buckle up moment here for the Philadelphia Eagles franchise, because one way or another, Adam, the future of the franchise, or the direction, I should say, is going to take a turn. Nick Sirianni could keep his job, but he's going to have to make massive changes on his staff, and like you said, maybe other things too, to do that, to present to Jeffrey Lurie why Jeffrey should be confident in him. Or the other thing's going to happen, and he's out of a job, and then holy cow, the Eagles are doing a head coaching search thing. I do think you make a good point. If Jeffrey wanted to, he could have just said, "Forget this, I'm firing him immediately." That's not normally his MO. The only time he ever did that, really, that in the modern, is with Chip Kelly, and that went beyond football. That was more about, that was personal. Honestly, he might say it was business, but that was personal.
He was furious the way that Chip handled people in the building, and it got Jeffrey. The word around the club was he wanted to take the team back because he felt that he gave Chip way too much, not just control the roster and all that. It's just, I don't blame him for hiring Chip. He was the everybody wanted him. He was the hot guy. It was between them and Cleveland for a while, and whatever the case may be. But as we fast forward to now. Look, there's going to be, as you said, there's going to be massive changes. We just, it's funny because it didn't work with Patricia, to say the least. Here's another thing. Does he say to Jeffrey, because he loved that Fangio scheme, right? Now we know some of even Vic had some struggles late in the season, but he had a ton of injuries. on defense with the Dolphins. Like, would it be fun? I don't know this, but it'd be funny if Jeffrey said, we're done with Fangio, you're not running it anymore. Wouldn't that be funny?
Yes, that would be very Eagles too, to just kind of switch things up on the fly.
Right. I'm making
I'm sort of really intrigued at him because, and I think we talked about this maybe on the last pod, but we'll expand on it more. If they were to move on from Nick Sirianni, right? Which, by the way, I think you've gotten the same kind of. We've reached the point where people are now from the league texting us like, "Holy hell, what's going on over there?" Right? Yeah. So like the shockwaves are out. If they were to fire Nick Sirianni and have to hire a new coach, this is a different situation. It's not the same kind of buildup where we need a quarterback. We're looking for a program builder to build this thing up. This roster with some good maneuvers on defense, especially. I mean, the offense should be good on defense, especially though, should be able to compete for the NFC East as long as they make the right moves and hit on the right players. And that, I wonder with Jeffrey, because people always bring up that he's getting older and eventually Julian's going to take over when he's ready. Does that put Jeffrey in a different mindset for this kind of hire? Does he want a veteran coach who can win right away? When I say right away, within a year or two, like get this team to win and competitive next year and not have to look for this young program build up. He's got the quarterback under contract.
Yeah, well, look, the offense is pretty set here. I mean, it's Slim Reaper will be here for years. He's awesome. A.J. Brown, he'll definitely be here through 24. The questions after that, when they could get out of potentially if they needed to. But obviously, this season coming up with A.J. Brown and Smith and Goddard, running back. It's not a big deal. Swift, had an excellent season. But see, here's another thing. Okay, as we walk through this. And we could everyone has their issues. Everyone watching has their issues with scheme and personnel usage, which was not good enough, to say the least. The embarrassment of trading for Swift and not using him as a pass game is to me unforgivable. I don't want to hear that he's not a good pass protection. It's not like they didn't know that coming in, and Gainwell was going to be their hurry up back, and he's better in pass pro. So what? Is there a rule that you can't throw the ball to the back on first and second down? Unless you're telling me there's not a rule, unless there is a rule, then that's egregious. That's bad. You absolutely could throw it over running back on first and second down. That's just bad on Sirianni and Brian Johnson. That can't happen. You and I were at training camp every day. We're blown away by how much he was getting football.
Right.
That can't happen again. That's stuff that Nick could correct that stuff. See, that's the stuff. And they say, you can't change your scheme. I get that. It's hard to do that. But in your playbook, there are plays. And I don't want to hear about Hurts doesn't like to check the ball down. That's complete nonsense.
Yeah.
Coach better. How about that?
Yeah. So this would be a unique situation. I mean, you think about Chip inherited Michael Vick on a 1-year deal, and they've put him through a charade of having to battle it out with Nick Foles in training camp. But that was not a long-term solution. That was a Michael Vick who was past his prime and a Nick Foles who was just starting to come up. And then who was that? Doug inherited Sam Bradford, who was obviously not going to be with the team for very long. They didn't even have Carson Wentz when Doug took the job. They knew they were going to draft and build something up around a young quarterback. And then Nick takes the job. All he's got is Jalen Hurts, who's entering year 2 as a guy who started 4 games and went 1-3 in those 4 games. So this would be a different type of situation. And you would wonder if it would make Jeffrey Lurie feel like he needs a different type of hire. I don't know this. No one said that to me. That's my own speculation, but it is definitely would be a different kind of situation if they were to be hiring a new head coach.
Well, let's hope it goes well. I've been a Nick supporter from day one. The opening press conference, I know a lot of people had problems with it. I learned my lesson about evaluating head coach press conference.
Yeah.
I've made some stupid comments over the years I'm not proud of.
Right.
Because he wasn't comfortable with it. That's okay.
Right.
It's all about performance. He's got to be better. This is an abomination. The second half, it got away from him.
Mm-hmm.
I applaud Jeffrey for not, as you said, being knee-jerk and firing him on Tuesday, which he could have done if he wanted to. To take it to this point, as you said, I agree with you. It's got to be a presentation. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I don't have much to add. You said it very well. But I'm also, one thing I do want to say, I'm curious, and I mentioned Fangio. Because we're going to get into some of the offensive stuff we've heard and what we think might happen, but I'm curious because the defense, we could talk all we want about the 5 new starters and injuries, and they're old and they don't run all that stuff. but schematically, the thing was a disaster. So I'm very interested to see what happens.
You and me both. I do, as we move on and segue though, I do feel like there's an element, and I think Jeffrey is smart enough to know this, but I don't know that it's going to matter. I just feel like there's an element of entrapment in here where you're asking Nick to present a whole lot of ideas and solutions 72 hours removed from just losing a playoff game. I just, you know how hard it is to find, again, we didn't talk about this, but it's worth mentioning. Nick Sirianni's coaching influences are not really in the NFL anymore. Frank Reich is not in the NFL at the moment. Todd Haley is he involved with the NFL? And he's not coaching anywhere.
No, he was in the USFL. He's the part-time host on Sirius XM NFL Radio.
There you go. Right, Mike McCoy. What's Mike McCoy doing?
Mike McCoy is a quarterbacks coach for the Jaguars.
Right. Okay. So one guy who's sort of still somewhat in the league, but is I'm just saying, I don't know what he has to tap into. He brought his people here, right? Marcus Brady's already with the Eagles. Kevin Patullo is already with the Eagles. So now, if he has to go outside the comfort zone and find the solution in 2 days when you've still got teams playing, you only have certain times you can talk to people, you only have certain people you're allowed to talk to at certain times. I think that's a really difficult thing. That's why I'm saying I hope he's been burning the midnight oil for the last 2 days.
Here's my issue with that. So I happened to talk to Joe Banner earlier this week, president, and it's funny you bring this up. Listen to Joe. By the way, I remember you talking about Andy when he sat down with you and Jeffrey, and he had the big binder. He had a deep list of 3 or 4 coaches per position. He goes, "No, 10." I'm like, "What do you mean 10?" He goes, "10 per position." I'm like, "What?" He said it was. He said he went back to junior college coaches, pro assistants, older coaches, younger coaches. He might have had a couple high school coaches on his list. That's unbelievably impressive. So that's no excuse for Nick. You're fair in what you say the timeline, but he's been in the league long enough to build his network.
That's fair.
Every NFL assistant coach has been in the league for a while. You need to have a network. That's not an excuse.
Okay, that is fair. That's fair. Okay. And we know he, just that you saying that, I know he is connected to that
not
Iowa.
10 though, but come on.
Yeah. No, we know he's connected a little bit to the the Iowa State coach is his good friend, right?
He actually played with him. Yeah, Matt Camway played with him at what's his place?
Why can't I think of it now? Is it Mount something?
Mount Union. Thank you. Good job.
There it is, Mount Union. Yeah. All right. So, all right, we'll have to see. Obviously, as you mentioned, if some big news happens, we'll jump on it. We'll do emergency pods if we have to, and we'll put it all in perspective. It'll be interesting. All right, Adam. Well, we always talk about this, how busy we are. I mean, we're going to be hitting that traveling circuit pretty soon, Senior Bowl, Combine, all that. No time to make meals. That's why we love HelloFresh. They deliver farm fresh food with pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to our doorstep. There's no wasting time at the grocery store because America's #1 meal kit helps make home cooking easy, efficient, and affordable. With HelloFresh, the shopping's already done. The perfect amount of ingredients arrive with step-by-step recipe cards. Doesn't get more efficient than that. Plus, HelloFresh saves you time and money. It's 25% less expensive than takeout, so you get a good home-cooked meal without digging deep into your wallet. And don't forget about taste and selection. They got steak, they got chicken, they got seafood, vegetarian meals, anything you want. So go to HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the code 50Eagles. That's all one word for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the code 50Eagles. That's 50Eagles, all one word for 50% off plus free shipping. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. All right, Adam. Well, the funny thing about, looking for coaches who are, known for being from certain trees or having, great schemes is that everybody wants them. And they're not always available. So let's go through some names that stand out to you that you think we should all be looking for.
Well, here's the thing, right? They looked at the West Coast offense in 2020, the Shanahan, Bay Disciple, Dan Morello. Didn't work. It's been so long, I don't remember. It just didn't work. It was done last year. He was only there 1 year, right, with the Eagles? Let's see.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Do you get the sense that they're going to go the same way here?
Yeah, I sense in our conversations, and I think, we both talked about this, that the sort of Shanahan McVay tree that for whatever reason the Eagles have not really tapped from, other than Scangarello, which was more, he was 1/4 of a whole bunch of coaches that were forced onto Doug, right? But I get a sense that this time around, that's what they want. They want scheme, right? You get a sense that they want somebody who knows how to get people open, function in space, get the ball to a variety of different players, not be predictable. So right now, they're not the same, even though Shanahan coached under McVay, or they both coached together on that Washington staff. They're not the same offense, but there are a lot of similarities in what they do with motion and formations to get guys open.
So, yes, Kyle's is more like his dad's offense. Sean McVay's he's kind of taken it to another level with spacing,
yes,
and formation variation. Andy's taken it he's bastardized it. I mean, Andy Reid has taken it to a whole nother level. So yeah, they don't, as we told people with Fangio, don't believe that they don't all run it the same way. There's
right.
Someone who coached Nick told me that, because we all do it differently. It's the principles, but you call it a different way. You might blitz a little more, whatever. So I'm interested to see, because there's some names we've heard, and we have a little bit of additional information on one of these guys we got from a league source. But you think it's, because it's not like Norv Turner, Norv was great in his day, but it's not like the Norv Turner disciples are getting jobs. So it's like, if you don't go after the West Coast offensive guys with a hot name, because Kyle Shannon's phenomenal. He's probably the best play caller right now in the National Football League. His ability to create space is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And then McVay's awesome.
Right.
So you see it. I mean, you're really seeing, and Gary Kubiak disciples, sons were in the league. You say Shane Waldron with Seattle, we'll talk about in a minute. It is amazing. These guys are getting out there.
Yeah, and remember the Shanahan system, which you see the Eagles saw twice with San Francisco and Miami. That's a heavy motion system that is intended to use motion to spring the run game. Whereas the McVay system tends to use the motion and the formation variation to spring the passing game. Not that the McVay one doesn't use it in the run game, but it's more prominent in the Shanahan style of system. Either way, they're both very good at getting guys open and getting guys in space and getting yards after catch. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say with McDaniel, I forgot to say that he's the other one, okay, who doesn't, he's like Kyle, he doesn't have an offense. Well, he does have an offense coordinator, Frank Smith. He's had some head coaching interviews, but McDaniel calls the plays. Now, his is a little different in that, yes, he creates space for Tua. It's quick. It's Tua. If you ask him to process off one read, as we were told privately, he struggles. And he's great when he gets it out of his hand quickly. Boy, he's awesome. When he doesn't, he struggles. But it's interesting with all the, and Shane Waldron, Seahawks OC. Yes, he's a disciple of. Is it more Kyle or McVay? I know he's with McVay.
Oh, that's a good point. I forget which guy he got his roots under, but go ahead. I think he's a run guy, right? So he's a little bit more of a Shannon. No, he was with the Rams. He was with the Rams. He went from Washington to the Rams, if I'm not mistaken. So before going to Seattle,
he was with those guys. Yeah,
I think he was.
Okay, so he was with Washington. So he was Washington for 1 year, then the Rams. Yeah, you're right. More McVay, correct? I would agree.
Yeah. Although he's kind of adapted there in Seattle because he worked for Pete Carroll and they like to run a lot. So even though McVay is known for he's known for both, but he's got great pass game concepts. Look, I mean, Geno Smith had a really good year 2 years ago. This past year, a little bit different, but he's well regarded. Now, with Waldron, Adam, he's already an offensive coordinator. Now, obviously, they have a head coach to hire. So what would be the protocol for, would he want to make a lateral move? I guess that depends on who they hire as a head coach, right? And B, could they...
Well, they can block him.
That's what I was going to ask. Could they just block him? Yeah.
Okay, so I have not talked to Coach a coaching agent who said that these guys could get out of their deals because think about it. Shane Waldron was brought on to work with Pete Carroll. Carroll's no longer the head coach. Why couldn't he? Because he was. I know it doesn't say it specifically in his contract, I'm sure, but he did become their OC to work with Pete. So Pete's no longer there. Why couldn't he get out of his contract? So, but I honestly, I don't know if he's got any time left. But typically, the way it works is, unless it's for a head coaching job, they can block him now. He's had some requests to interview for a head coaching job, so we'll see. So what's our expectation here? That they're going to look from what we've heard, we expect them to go look into or they are looking into these WCO guys.
Yeah, these West Coast offense guys, these Shanahan style guys, these McVay style guys. Hey, and I think we should also mention Josh McDaniels is somebody that they nearly, it was down to Nick Sirianni and Josh McDaniels as a head coach. So even though that there might be a negative public opinion of Josh McDaniels because he has not done well as a head coach, he has done well as an offensive coordinator. And he is known as being a guy who has good scheme that can get guys open, throw to the running back, throw to the tight end, throw to wide receivers. So, wait, wasn't he still with when the Patriots went 10-7 with Mac Jones 2 years ago?
Yes.
Wasn't that he was on that? He was the offensive coordinator, right?
It was fantastic. Yes.
Yeah.
And you're good call. You're 100% right.
So yeah, Josh McDaniels, probably someone that we should just kind of have on our consciousness there, only because we know the Eagles have been interested in him in the past.
Right. With Josh, now his thing is not, he doesn't run West Coast. He runs the Earhart system. Ron Earhart system. Belichick coached with him many years ago, I think, with the Giants. That one is a lot of heavy 12 personnel. Lots of shifting, not as much motion, but a lot of shifting of the tight end. You see a move from side to side. Now, speaking of McDaniels, his brother Ben, his younger brother Ben, is the wide receivers coach / passing game coordinator. Now, Ben has experience in different systems. The West Coast one, this one, which Bobby Slowick runs, and his brother's one. So that's a name to keep an eye on. I don't know if he's on the list, but I'm just saying, I'm mentioning this name because he's a guy now that, you know how this works. When a team comes out of nowhere, you start looking at names.
Yeah.
And just the guy, Ben McDaniels, who's got an interesting back.
So Ben is in Houston. He's with D'Amico Ryans. He, as you just mentioned, is underneath their offensive coordinator is Bobby Slowick, who's actually being interviewed, these days for head coaching jobs. Just did a great job with that Texans offense. Still doing a great job, obviously, CJ Stroud. So the Texans are a team that has brought a lot of people over from San Francisco and from the Shanahan scheme. So you've got, like you just said, Ben McDaniels. Gerard Johnson is there. Is he a former Eagle? Gerard Johnson, their pass game coordinator?
Yes. No. Gerard Johnson was a former Eagles OTA quarterback.
Yeah. I know. He's pass game coordinator or quarterbacks coach. I'm sorry, for the Texans, right?
Right.
But he was with the Eagles at one point. as a camp body. I guess I was going to say a camp body, but yeah, as an OTA quarterback.
Yes, in fact, he was such a highly recruited quarterback to Texas A&M, I think it was. He just never became the quarterback people thought. And and Shane Day, by the way, he's a senior offensive assistant who was with with Kyle back in Washington. I remember that name. I'm not saying they would hire him. We're just talking about. And by the way, yes, Day had an experience in the Shanahan system. Bill Lazor's on that list too, was an offensive coordinator under Matt Nagy with the Bears.
Yes. So Bill Lazor was with the Eagles under Chip Kelly. So that probably means you won't see him back in Philadelphia. Although you never know, like Jeff Stoutland. But so Bill Lazor was also on the 1993 Cornell football team that Jeff Stoutland. Remember we did the Derek Gunn did the gun on one with members of the 1993 Cornell football team. What's the first offensive line that Jeff Stoutland ever coached? That was his first offensive line coaching job. Well, Bill Lazor was a quarterback on that Cornell team.
Wow.
So wait, that ties it all together now, doesn't it?
Wow. Well, look, Jeff could stand up for him. But so the names to keep an eye on: Zach Robinson, the Rams pass game quarterbacks coach. They're out of the playoffs obviously now.
He just interviewed, by the way, in Chicago for their
right.
Job,
That'd be a good name. Right, that'd be a good name. Remember when he was drafted in the NFL. Clint Kubiak, Gary's son,
Mhm.
who's obviously not available right now. He's their pass game. He's the Niners pass game coordinator, a pass game specialist. He was an OC under with the Vikings for 3 seasons. He had play calling experience, I believe. My understanding is he's got ties to the Browns staff, so you might want to keep an eye on him if you're listening and you're a Browns fan. So those are some of the other than Josh McDaniels, who's not a West Coast guy. Waldron, Zach Robinson, Clint Kubiak, there may be other names. And this is a great, I'll tell you what, this West Coast offense, isn't it unbelievable how long it's been in the NFL? And it seems to work. You know?
Very modified though. It's the
Sure.
West Coast offense that Shanahan and McVay are running are not what Andy Reid ran in 1999, right? When he took over.
Yes.
Even Andy's not running the sad.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
he's like doing all sorts of fireworks. Right. That's a great call. But
Yeah.
Clint Kubiak is really good, by the way.
Anybody in Miami that would I know they've had an assistant coach who's interviewing, right? Or Frank
Smith, but
Frank Smith, yeah.
I can't, because it would be now the only difference is he doesn't call the plays there.
So that's not gonna, unless they think he's ready to be a great play caller. But yeah, that's
right. Now they do have Darrell Bevel, who's been poor guy. He's been the interim head coach back-to-back years for 2 different staffs, I think.
Yeah.
When the head coach got fired, which is almost an NFL record. That was kind of a running joke with coaches. Now he knows the West Coast system. He's been to a Super Bowl, but he's also moved on a lot. I don't know if that name makes a lot of sense here. Eric Studesville is one of the best running back coaches in the NFL, but he does not have play calling experience. You know who's on their staff? Not that he's a play caller, Wes Welker.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Good stuff. All right. We're going to take a real quick break to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars, then wrap this up to finish off the podcast.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter makes sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them Adam just sent you. You'll get a great deal. Adam, before we get out of here, would you consider this one of the more pivotal days and weekends in recent franchise history?
Sure. I mean, it better go well today. I wish Nick the best of luck. Take a cue from the former head coach, the guy preceded you, that he didn't get the memo well. It wasn't received well.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: he's no leverage on a terrible season like this. The wins don't matter. 11 wins. It's the way you close the season. The embarrassment of the second half got away from him. Nick's better than this. I believe that, by the way. I believe strongly. Like if you and I were running the show here, I'd bring him back, but I'd have a hard talk. Way harder than you could have it in season. We know that Jeffrey Nick talk, but this is a real talk here. This is a real meeting, or maybe 2. Who knows? But if you and I we're running the show, you and I would sit down and go, Nick, this is unacceptable. We're in a real offense here. Your system ain't working. Put Brian Johnson in a tough spot. That wasn't fair to him. It's embarrassing how much our offense regressed. Jalen's better than this. Got to do a better job. We're not absolving him. He needs to be better.
Mm-hmm.
We've outlined in the show that the lack of screens terrible. Worst screen team in the National Football League. Passing concepts were bad. We're not going to put it all on you, but the execution's got to be better by the players. But bottom line is you got to be better. And you got to accept responsibility. Simple.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, there is a big part of me, and again, we're not Jeffrey Lurie. The big part of me that says, you hired this guy and you said you're hiring for the coach that he is and the coach that he will be. You got to give the coach a chance to grow some. But I guess the coach's got to show that he's grown some. So, he's got to show that growth in that meeting. So we will have it all covered as we always do here on Inside the Birds. All right. You've been listening to Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.